I'll have your lanyards, your stuff. You'll get signed in. Don't worry about that. If you're not going to get to go with us to Orlando, I want to know what's going on with Expo. www.exponential.org, or if you have the phone version, m.exponential.org. Either one will get you to the Exponential website. It has a list of all the main speakers. It has a list of all the breakout sessions that are available for you. The sessions are live streamed. The main worship sessions are, for those of you that cannot go to Orlando with us. Begins on Tuesday, whatever that first Tuesday of March is, about 1 o'clock our time is when it kicks off. It's worth watching the worship sessions. That way you'll have a sense of what we're going through while we're in Orlando, and you don't totally miss out on that. Pray for the week, guys, if you haven't yet. It's the largest gathering of church planners on the globe, as far as I know. 5,000 plus sold out in Orlando. Who knows how many are watching online. It's going to be a great time, so I'm looking forward to that. We will take care of your tickets, like I said. If you're going with us, your church is going, it's 2 free tickets for church. It's reimbursement on travel up to $300. As long as you give me receipts, don't just hold a handout, let's try. Thursday night will be a free meal. We're doing pizza together from Giordano's as a group. So, best pizza on the planet. So, it should be great. As far as our network goes, we're about to expand. Some of you met James Dean from New Day Church in Nashville. We talked with the leadership team this morning about James, about a church plant in Oregon as well. I've got a couple of last details with both those groups to take care of, and Lord willing, next month we'll be gathering here, signing a covenant with 2 new churches coming out of churches playing for CPCNs. It's many times the word churches in one sentence. 2 new coming there, some others that we're talking to as well. If you've got other church planting friends that are looking for a support network, we are not an ATM. It's not just show up and expect a check. But if you've got some folks that are wanting to expand and multiply the kingdom, get them connected with us. We want to go through the training. There's an official proposal they fill out. There are some guidelines and check marks we have, so we're taking good care of your resources. But God is growing the family, and it's a good thing. That's part what's exciting about talking today about ministering with the next generations, is you guys are the next wave, we hope, of what God does through this network and multiplying. So, to leave anything out, we got that. Coming attractions, yes I did. Just so you know, next month, Chris Stevens from Faith Promise Church in Knoxville will be our guest leader. Chris is coming in. If you're not familiar with Faith Promise, the story, it's been an amazing explosion of God's kingdom in the Knoxville area, and well beyond Knoxville itself now. He'll be leading us next month. April, we're going to be talking about closing the back door. I know most of you guys are passionate evangelists. You want to see people come to Christ, but you kind of get that revolving door thing. They come to Christ, they get baptized, they disappear. We're going to try to cut off that disappearing end of things, where it's making disciples, getting them connected to the church, helping the body continue growing. Just something's not right if our churches are baptizing 140 people a year and worship attendance is growing by 1. There's a disconnect that shouldn't be in place. So we're going to talk about that in April. May, talking about preaching. Bobby Davis from Life Church here in Cook will be our leader. And in June, we're talking about building relationships with your brothers from another mother. How to get along with other churches in your area. Specific things that we can do to build those bridges instead of building competition among the churches. Yeah. So that's kind of coming attractions for the network here at CPCN. We are glad you're here. I'm going to turn it over back to Steve, I think, and our panel of experts as we talk about ministering with millennials and those younger.
All right. I do hope that if you know someone else that is interested in church planting, if you can invite them to come. Our heart is to mentor, coach, encourage as many people as possible. If pastors and planners are healthy, churches will be healthy. It's a hard work. We know it. Nobody understands it if they're not in it. I mean, I've talked to so many of you guys and prayed with so many of you guys. I mean, not a week that goes by that somebody's not had someone who's lost a church member to death, suicide, car accident, you name it. Somebody who's in your church hasn't, while at the same time trying to carry the weight and the leadership of your own personal family, you know, is struggling with trying to help rescue 2 or 3 marriages. Sometimes I felt like I care more about people's marriages than they care about their own. And you feel like you're fighting for their marriage more than they are. And sometimes it feels like the same thing about people's salvation, you know, and that you're praying and weeping and more concerned about where people are at than others. And so thank you. Thank you for all that you do to minister to people and pour into their lives. As we're talking about reaching this next generation, Jimmy's been our worship pastor for how many years now, Jimmy?
Well, I've been, this is my 10th year on staff. My job has changed a little over the years, but yeah.
He went from worship pastor to executive pastor to youth pastor to no. Jimmy's been plugged in with us. He went with one of our first church plants to Monterey, Tennessee, which we had some good stories we learned there. Number one, I got to tell the story. Sure. Number one, the church planter named the church Catalyst. Okay, that was his vision, was naming it Catalyst, and he had a molecule on his picture, as Catalyst, and that was his logo. Jimmy's wife is a chemistry teacher, and when they pulled up the very first day, she looked at it and she said, "Jimmy, why is our logo for our church the fart molecule?"
Methane molecule. She was like, "Why is it a fart?"
And so there are
That's how the rest of it went.
Good. So without any further ado, I've invited Jimmy to come and share his experiences. Most of the folks he works with are younger than him on our band. If you come see our band on Sunday mornings, I would say 80% of them are 30 and under. And so I asked Jimmy if he'd just come and share some insights, because of people that I've seen working with the younger generation. I've really seen Jimmy be able to not just be able to recruit, but to see him disciple and utilize their giftings in an amazing way. And then after he gets done, we've got a couple of guys from our college ministry, and we got a couple more that are coming. They had class till 10. They're going to come, and they're going to be a panel, and you can just pick their brains. I just asked if we could pick their brains and just hear from them to better understand where they're coming from. So Jimmy, go ahead.
Thanks, Steve. So we already were joking about like the generational lines. Like, I'm a millennial, I'm Gen X, whatever. There's a lot of surveys, like different Reuters and different people that do that kind of thing and try to define what the characteristics of generations are. It's a little nebulous and it changes a lot. So if you feel like, well, that's not exactly right, Jimmy, it's like it kind of changes pretty back and forth. I've seen it change in the last 6 months, because we were joking about me being an elder millennial, so I was born in 1980, and I thought that made me Gen X, so I just thought I'm Gen X for a long time. I was a teenager in the 90s and graduated in 1998, and I always thought, well, yeah, that's where I fall. I'm the Gen X kind of person. But then they were restructuring the millennial thing, and it turns out that I'm just on the cusp of being a millennial, which begins at 1980 and goes to like 1995. But just an overview, and all this stuff is man-made. Like, what does this even mean? I just think it's accurate enough to give it a look and see how you address and connect with people that are older and younger than you. I think it's perfectly beneficial to use as a tool on how you not only lead people, disciple people, but especially how you get them to go from like observing Jesus to partnering with Jesus. So 1924 to 1945, that's my dad. He's gone, but he was a builder, focused on career, encouraged to conform to society. And then 1946 to 1955 were boomers. They were more relaxed and more tolerant. They were digital immigrants, as they say, and they had lots of kids. And then 1965 to 1979 is the Gen X, MTV, trendy, lots of credit card debt, skeptical PC people. Is that true? Pretty much. 1980 to 1995, that's me and many of us in the room. Millennials, digital natives, meaning like I grew up with a computer. Like, I didn't grow up with an iPhone, but I've always had a personal computer in the house that I utilized. I remember reading like a GW Basic, which was like DOS coding, and I was like, I read it before I went to bed at night. I was that cool. Isn't that awesome? I was a digital native, so that generation is more sophisticated. They have a broader worldview. They're more flexible, but they're also super demanding, and they see the world as 24/7. So this is my generation. Now, my daughter, who's Gen Z, the internet is her life. iPads and screens and all that garbage. She's globally focused. She has no idea. She will talk about Daddy in Japan, they do this, and in Belfast they do and not only is she being taught that in first grade, but we also talk about the nations. You know, the nations is at our doorstep. We talk about our friends that are in Oregon, and to her that seems like a plane ride away, whereas to me it felt like the other side of the world. And so I feel like the younger you get, the more globally focused you become, and I feel like that's important to understand, because that changes the narrative of those young people, and their also roles and their responsibility in the world. Their scope is now broadened more than ever. They're visually engaged. They're socially defined. I think that's really important. Like all of the internet stuff, like the Instagram and Twitter and Snapchat and all that stuff that we see is like that we may see as time wasters. They contract some of their identity from their presence on these social networks, and the things that me as a millennial or as a Gen X, I look at that. I see the trivialness of it. But if some, like, I was talking to Kim last night, my wife, and she was like, she was a school teacher, by the way, for 12 years, taught juniors and seniors advanced chemistry and physics. So she got the good, bright kids, the older kids. And it was always funny, like, how much they cared about stuff. She was like, Janet didn't like my Facebook post. You know, this is a girl talking to my wife. She didn't like it. And she was like, who cares? And she was like, it really hurts my feelings because she's liked all my posts, but she didn't like this one. And like, I don't even know who likes my stuff. Like, I never clicked the button to find out more. I'm like, cool, 100 likes, that's awesome. And that's as much credence as I give it. Well, anyway, if I see a big number of likes, I'm like, well, that's fun. You know, but I don't go in like, did Jen like it? I'm gonna see if Jen likes it. But Gen Z does. Because they're socially defined. I'm not socially defined. Or refined by either characteristic. So anyway, that gives you some overview, and I don't want to put boundaries in your mind, but just some ideas. When I look at those generations, and I look at the builder, I think of my dad. When I look at the boomers, like 1955, I don't want to call anybody out, but I think, is anybody born between 46 and 55 in this room? So no boomers in here? So now we're
55 or 65.
Yeah, there's a 10-year gap there. Between.
Oh, I apologize. I misspoke. 1946 to 1965. Okay, and then we've got Gen X and Millennials and so forth. So I might think of some of you fellas, or some of my bosses in life, some of the senior pastors, executives, elders in your church are some boomers, and then Gen X. I think about me and my friends. And frankly, and then millennials are a large swath of the people that are serving with me. And then Gen Z, I think about my children. And so it's easier to kind of picture people when it comes to generational definement. But again, it's simply a tool for you to be able to connect with people better. Because honestly, the gospel doesn't change, and we don't have to change either. I think that's the beauty of when you're reaching up and down. Like, what I've discovered is when I was first starting ministry here at the River, I was 27, and I felt like I couldn't reach up very well. And I think it was just a limitation of my maturity and also my age. Like, I didn't have children, I wasn't married very long, what did I know? And I'm making some presumptions here, but I didn't feel like I led up very well. I didn't feel like I engaged the boomers, so to speak. And now that 10 years is later, and I've got 2 children and a mortgage and, debt, I feel like I could reach up okay. I feel like I can reach up about 15 years, reach down about 15 years. And I've become, I really started to, this is tangential, but I really love kids now that I have kids. I didn't at first, but now I really, really enjoy children. And children know if you enjoy them. This is just a side thought. But it's really important that if you do love children, you let them know that you enjoy them and that they're fun and God made them good, and it's good to spend time with them, and that you've been blessed hanging out with them. I think we forget that. But all to say, that's where my vantage point is coming from, that Gen X millennial idea. And so as I'm leading teams, the team has gone, when I came to the River, Brian Vaughn was in the worship pastor position, and there was about, I would say, 12 people. 12, maybe 15 people on the team, and that included tech as well. And so as the church has grown, so has our ministry. And the numbers have varied a lot. And we're up on a higher number now where the people that I oversee directly is about 70, where you've got vocalists, band, and singers. And we recently, thankfully, hired a creative arts director. Before that, I was over even more people. And now, under his leadership, that pool of people has ballooned to 140 or something. Like with cameramen and sound people and greeters and everybody that's kind of getting pulled into this sphere. It's a lot of folks. And Steve was right. I think I didn't do the math, but the outliers are like a couple 16-year-olds and a couple 50-year-olds. If you take those people out and you average what was in the middle, I'd say average age is probably like 28 or 30. And I feel like that's a sweet spot for me because I've always benefited from someone that's about 10 years older than me. And again, forgive me if I'm meandering, but I'm trying to meander quickly, briskly meander. But I feel like mentorship and discipleship is so vital. And I've always thrived when I found someone about 10 years older than me to ask them questions like, okay, what does it look like to raise teenagers? Because I've got little kids right now, and I'm doing okay. But I'm not, I'm doing okay. That's about my best estimation. But I see teenagers, and that intimidates me. And like, what do you? And so when not to put to be on the spot, but we have staff, and in staff you break out for prayer, and you kind of go 2 by 2 because it's like a Noah thing. It's like a biblical thing. But so we were praying, and he was like talking about one of his children and an issue they were talking about in terms of like school and finances. And I just was really grateful. I was like, I'm listening hard. Like, how's Steve? And no pressure, Steve. But I'm like, how's Steve gonna handle this? Like, and I know he's thinking, how am I gonna handle this? Because he's walking through it maybe for one of the first times. But for me, that's so valuable. And so I superimpose that on the people that I'm leading, that if it means that much to me, how much will it mean to the people that I'm leading if I'm willing to pull the curtain back and say, stand on the shoulders of my failure? Like, anyway, yeah, I want you to not make the mistakes I've made. You're probably going to do it anyway, but at least hear me out, kind of thing. So a couple thoughts I've had as far as my strategy for leading the next generation, and I'm just going to go through these like bullet points, and if anyone has any great additions or a challenge, I'll try to be okay with that, but feel free to chime in when appropriate. Small is big when it comes to reaching younger people. Small is big. You want to be intentional and consistent. I feel like that's really important. I feel like a lot of us might feel the pressure to make grand moves and grand gestures to either aggrandize yourself or impress them in some way, when in fact it's that consistent, diligent, intentional engagement that gains yardage with young people. Small is big. You don't have to change the way that you dress or the way that you speak or the way that you act or what you present to them. You don't have to change it all up. I think it's just a matter of looking at a young person and saying, I care about you enough to ask questions, to be a part of your life. And like, let's put it in a Sunday morning context. It's not just, hey, good morning, thanks for being here today. It's like, hey, I know that you had a job interview this week. Hey, I know you're looking for a house. I know that your kid was sick. I know that your cousin just came out of the closet and your mom's really not okay with it. And you were talking to your brother and now there's some, you need to care about them enough to know these things and care about them enough to mine and dig and figure. And it's not that you have to know everything and every facet about them, but you have to care enough to get inside, see what's important to them, and then make consistent, intentional engagement with them. And then as far as like leadership, I say lead with passionate encouragement. My dad just said, here, do it. Dad, how do you do this? Get over here. Like, he wasn't a coach. It was like leading by fear or leading by grunting. And some of us had that dad. And then I had some other people that were better at coaching, but it was, Dad led more like, don't do it that way. don't do it like that. And you're like, oh gosh, okay. You get afraid to make a mistake, you know. And I feel like when in my context with bands and stuff, it is so tempting to be like, someone does something, I'm like, And have you ever seen that SNL skit where Fallon is the IT guy, and they're like, I'm just trying to get my I'm just trying to get my screensaver to work. He's like, move, you're an idiot. And no one talks like that to anybody, but I feel like we come across that way.
No one?
Maybe you do, and you need to talk to Steve later. But when I first got involved, I felt like my contribution was going to be taking the band from being like a hobby kind of band to being more of a professional band, and so I really focused on excellence. And so I had a drummer. This is my failure, so don't do this. So I play a bunch of things. I'm not the best at it, but I'm enough to be very dangerous. And so the drummer was playing, I needed to play a Coldplay beat. I needed to play like that, and he was going for something completely opposite. And I was like, yeah, did you listen to the record? And he's like, yeah, but I kind of like it this way. Which is code for like, I don't know how to play it the other way. And I said, well, hey, why don't you get up? I was like, God, 1, 2, 3. And so I proceed to play the entire drum part, just like the record, in front of him while, you see this? And I did it again with another guy, and it put a big rift between us. I'm laughing about it now because it's just kind of, you're either laughing or you're crying. That's my motto. But he was playing something on keyboards, and I was like, it's actually just like this. And I'm like, beep, 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 and he started playing. And so that's bad. I don't think that's a good way to lead people, to show them, don't do it that way, do it this way. And I feel like when you're leading folks that are younger than you, it's really easy to crush their spirit. But this is true leadership for anybody. So I like to lead from passionate encouragement. So I find the thing that I like, and I tell them I like it, and then I ask them to do something even cooler. So like, if I hear a drum part, and it's not exactly what I want, I say, or we run the song, and I'm like, that was pretty good, especially for a first time. Thanks for digging in and learning on that new song. Now on that bridge, I feel like it could be even more awesome. Wouldn't it be great? Okay. Wouldn't it be great, Craig, if you were like, okay, 16ths on the toms, and then Robbie, okay. Now you don't come in right then, but then you come in. And it's true, and it's part of my personality, but I coach from excitement and not from correction. And I feel like that's important with that younger generation as you're reaching down. They've been corrected, and they've been told that they're lazy, and they've been told that they don't bring a lot to the table. And so when you invest in them and say, God made you good, what you're doing is fine, I think it could be even better. Like, wouldn't it be greater? Wouldn't it be cooler? Wouldn't it be more fun? Wouldn't it be more awesome? Like, I just kind of changed the way I dialogue about that leadership, and it gets me a lot more mileage versus move. Let me show you how to play this drum part. Move, idiot. Let me play this piano part for you. Slap the bass, Because my sinfulness, I would love more than anything. The greatest worship band would be me. that's my sin. Now, I have to deal with that. Like, if I could clone myself and play every part, that would be the funnest Sunday morning ever, because I'm a selfish, vain person. But none of us is as awesome as all of us. If I was to do that, it would not be nearly as neat and as awesome as engaging all these volunteers. This multi-generational thing that happens, it's like a symphony. It's like, if it's all cellos, it's not cool. So I just want to encourage you to lead with encouragement and passion and not correction. Correction will come. I mean, that has to happen sometimes. But in terms of like your day-to-day, just coaching people along, I would just encourage you to be more encouraging. Okay, so be the person you needed back then. I probably don't even have to say much about that. But I've always loved people to do that for me. When it's like they see me and where I'm at, I have a set of gifts and talents, I have a set of convictions, I have a calling on my life, and someone reaches down and says, yeah, let me walk with you in this. Let me come alongside you in this. There's many of you know Brian Vaughn. All of his children are amazing. because they're just amazing parents and they just do everything right, it seems. Which I know they don't, but I admire their family a lot, and I admire Brian a lot. He's Big Papa, that's what we call him, or we did back in the day. And so Big Pop's got sons, and I call them the Sons of Thunder. It's Luke, Eli, and Carson. And they love music, and they love God, and they are incredibly talented. They have a lot of raw talent, but they're also hard workers, and they care about what they're doing, and they're sacrificial in the way that they, I mean, they're more mature than I am at, their ages. And so I'm seeing that, and I don't mean to flatter myself, but I'm just trying to give you some context. When I was that age, I was very much like that. I was more immature. I wasn't as grounded, but I had a lot to offer. I had a lot of ability at a young age. And most of the people that were an older generation coming down to me were intimidated and threatened by me. The river was the first place that they were not threatened by my gifts, but they were pumped. I came along with Brian, and Brian would admit to you that he loves music, but his title was worship pastor, but he was like a pastor of worship. Like that was his gifting. He could do the worship, but his heart was for people. And I was most definitely a worship pastor, and I had to learn how to love people. I was just so pumped about the music. But blah, 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 all to say, I get here, and here's this guy that can play da-da-da-da-da, and Brian could have been like, yeah, Jimmy, we've got Patrick and Jim, so we're good, and we'll just, I think we're fine. Feel free to serve in children's. It would be easy because, imagine someone comes to your church and can preach the paint off the walls. What do you do with that guy? He might even be better than me at it. Do you shriek back into the night and get selfish and be like, oh, this is my baby, this is my process, this is my thing? Or do you say, God has brought me a gift, and these Vaughn boys are a gift. They're incredible. And so I'm all the time reaching down, calling, encouraging, texting. This isn't about me, but I just want to give you that picture. Like, I'm intentionally over and again, over and above, being the person I needed back then. I want them to know that not only am I not threatened by them, God is going to build the church with them. God is going to make them game changers and kingdom movers and shakers. And we even had a joke about it on Sunday. I did a couple songs in the sound check, and my voice was all 39. And I went to go get some water, and Carson walks over to the mic. He goes, "Welcome to the river, everybody." I was like, "Not yet." I was kidding, but part of me was like, "Okay, am I cool with that?" Just being honest with you, I just want that to sit. That young man is good. I'm 39 years old, and he is exceptionally good. When he's 25, he'll be better than I ever been. And I hope it's because of me. Got it? Be the person you needed back then. Okay, this one's kind of fun. I feel like Pastor Bobby. It's not too rhyming, though. Cast a mission. Don't cast a vision. Cast a mission. I came up with that all by myself. So, like, these young people, if they're in church and they love God and they're trying to move forward in their faith, they're understanding the fundamentals of faith, and they understand Christendom, and they understand their role in it. But one thing you have to understand with like Gen X, Millennial, and Gen Z is they have a global perspective, and they have personal convictions about social justice and seeking and saving and helping and philanthropy. They have a much broader idea of what it means to make a difference in the world. And so I don't want to they already have the vision. I want to cast a mission for them. I want to help them connect their personal convictions to God's greater kingdom work. Because we all know that, like, in the world they call it social justice. In the Bible we call it James 1:27. Pure and true religion, undefiled before the fathers, is to care after widows and orphans in their distress and keep yourself unpolluted from the world. That's social justice. Like, taking care of those that cannot help themselves. Jesus invented it. It's the gospel. That's a core value of who we are as Christians. But it's been co-opted by the masses as social justice. And it's beautiful things get done in the name of social justice, but I feel like we can take this vision-oriented generation and cast a mission before them. How might the kingdom of God overlay with your personal convictions and the changes you want to see them in the world? Because God doesn't want people to be hungry. God wants people to be cared for. He wants those that are orphaned to be adopted. He wants those that are far from him to be drawn near. I mean, remember the banquet feast? He talks about, I invite all these people to the banquet. Well, Lord, they don't want to come. It's like, well, go to the hedges, go to the highways, go to the alleyways, go and find anybody that wants to come and be a part of this banquet. He's seeking and he's going to those places, and they are going to do it. I would rather do it in the name of Jesus and really see kingdom movement happen versus a clothing drive. I want to see people come to know the Lord and not just gathering soup cans, cast a mission. Okay. Are we good? Okay on time? Am I going fast enough?
Yeah, I'm time.
About 2.5 hours more.
Okay, well, we only have 3, so we
Okay.
need some time.
Do you want me to stop at 11?
That's good.
Okay. Delegate, don't deliberate. This is hard for all of us. Give it away faster than you'd like. Many young people are not utilized. It's presumed that they're lazy and etc. And you need to delegate authority and not tasks. Because when you delegate authority, you create leaders. When you delegate tasks, you get followers. Followers are great, but leaders build the kingdom. And we don't want to waste time with folks. We want to give them the authority to step out in faith and to do the big things of God. And it's not easy because you want it done correctly, and you may even just want it done in a way that makes a lot of sense. And I don't want to belabor it too much, but Steve's often challenged me. He's like, can you get it to 80%? Whatever the idea is, the 80-20 rule he calls it. And it's one of the most frustrating coaching things that he's ever, and I still don't get it. I don't know how to not full butt something. I don't know how to not go for it. Like if I'm excited about it, I want to put it all in. But Sunday comes every week. There's a lot of opportunities for people to lead, and even if it's the tiniest thing, I don't get to preach much, and so when I'm asked to do communion, it's an honor. I'm grateful for it. And Steve's like, oh, cool, thanks for doing it. But it's that means a lot to me. Or leading this, I don't get a lot of these opportunities. So he was like, do you want to do it? I'm like, yes, I'm there tomorrow. I'm not prepared. I'm ready to go. So delegate, don't deliberate. I think we're waiting for people to be ready, and we forget how not ready we were. I've not been ready for anything, ever. So just do it. Asking one practical way you can see that out is asking, how can I help? Because if you say, how can I help, the impetus is on them, and you automatically give them some authority, because you're basically kowtowing or acknowledging that they are doing a work and you are partnering with them. Versus kowtowing is where you're bowing. Sorry. You basically are tipping your hat to them.
Too many syllables.
No, it's just a word.
He made it up.
You can look it up. Plain and scrap. It's a hat tip to them versus how's it going with Harvest Fest? Or, hey, how can I help with Harvest Fest? How can I help means, I know you're doing your job, I know you're on it, I know you're working, how can I partner with you? Versus, hey, how's that going? Or what's going on with? Or catch me up to speed about. Words matter, guys. It's crazy. It is crazy. How can I help? That will help you give authority away versus giving tasks away. Okay, and especially in terms of generation, the Millennials and Generation Z, culture is king. This is me. This is not the Bible. Make it fun. Fun is one of my core values. I try to keep it light. I have a tendency to either be super serious or super not, and I'm trying to find that middle ground and find that ebb and flow. We have a lot of opportunities to joke and laugh, and I don't want to be the buzzkill, but I also don't want to give people a ground to get ahead of themselves. And when it comes to the way that they relate to each other. So I just try to keep a fun atmosphere, especially on the worship team. Nobody dogs anybody. Nobody's got a spot. Like, Craig is not the drummer, even though he is an incredible drummer, and I love him. And you can drum every week if you want to. He is not the drummer. I don't have, Robbie is the bass player, and it's my spot. It's not like that. We get to serve on this team, and I play drums, and I play bass, and I lead. It's not my team either. I try not to say my, I try to say our, that kind of thing. But that's part of that culture, is like the words that you choose basically create a narrative for your ministry. So if I'm saying ours instead of mine, and I'm saying team instead of part, I'm talking about roles, I'm talking about lanes. I use a lot of different words to say very simple things, but it's basically trying to establish, I feel like the culture for the worship team is God can use you to do great things to impact the kingdom. You can use your gifts and talents. You'll have fun. You'll make friends. Hopefully you'll be challenged and you'll have an opportunity to grow. I mean, that's the vibe I'm trying to create, and you'd have to ask Craig or someone else if that's true. But I feel like we're in a good spot with that, and there's a good culture of mutual respect, and also people willing to go deep with one another, pray, and connect with each other. It's good. Okay, this one is one we've talked about before, and nobody loves it. I don't know how to put this. It seems like it goes over like a lead balloon, but it's probably the most important thing we're going to talk about. You have to embrace technology. Okay, moving on. No, you have to. And I'll tell you why. Let's recognize some trends. Okay, Netflix, not Blockbuster, right? Right. Mobile phones over landlines. Uber over taxi, download over CD, Airbnb versus traditional hotels, Amazon over Payless, Kmart, Macy's, Sears, Radio Shack, Toys R Us. Embrace technology. Yeah. You have to. It is the new industrial revolution. It is what's happening. And by embracing technology, I don't mean that you have to have a persona and be the guy that films. I don't do that. That scares me to death. Hey guys, it's Jim Bob from stupidchurch.com. Whatever. And I'm not making fun of, if you do that kind of thing, you probably do it really well. And that's how I feel as I'm doing it. I'm parodying my emotion. I'm sorry. But I do feel like the guys that have the courage to do that kind of thing are in the right lane. I feel like you're on the right way. I feel like whatever you're doing, so long as it's authentic, is the right move. If you're leveraging technology for it, it is not authentic for me to be like, hey guys, I'm never gonna do that, guys. Never, never, never. And so the way that I engage consistently on social media is if Craig posts a picture of his dog, I like it. It's super, super simple. I'm on Instagram. I like Instagram, I think. And I'll scroll through, and there's Ben, his family. I like that. Hey, looking good. I mean, it seems trivial. But if you take 15 minutes out of your day and like posts, like, let's switch gears. If you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to build a business and you have a brand and you're on Instagram and people are connecting with you all day and you don't reply to the comments, you might as well not do it. So if you've got the River, I'll just speak for us. We've got the River Instagram page, and it's pretty weak. Like, it's not very trafficked. Facebook is much better. If someone sends us a message, we reply. If someone puts down a comment, we like it. If someone checks in, we give it a heart. All that stuff is exhausting, but just because it exists doesn't mean it doesn't have to be your hand to do it. I just want you to embrace technology in an authentic way. So technology also includes text messaging. If ever I get a phone call, I assume that someone has died. Is that fair? Yep. And it's funny, like Steve asked us to call the people that sign the connection cards. And I try, and I farm it up to Craig before, like, will you call these people? Because Steve told me to. But if there's ever a number, I also send them a text. And it always goes through. And it's always their cell phone number. Hey, this is Jimmy from the River. Luckily, the river gives me a small stipend to offset my phone bill, so I just use it like it's a work phone. If someone were to wear me out, block. I've done that before. I used to block their number. But anyway, I'll just send my stuff, and great to see you. Let me know. And then I'll also reach out through Facebook. And I will say, if you're trying to vet people and see what they're like, do what every job does now. Like if I was to get hired at your church, first thing you do, look up my Facebook page, look up my Instagram, look at my Twitter, all that stuff. If anyone's a candidate for being on the worship team, that's the first thing I do. One, I'm trying to put a face and a name together in case I've met them before. But then also, there's this one lady that applied for the worship team, and I pulled up her picture, and I was like, okay, picture's worth 1,000 words. And then I kind of scroll through, and she is part of a CBD marijuana distributor thing, and I'm like, and that wasn't it didn't mean well, I'm not calling her back. It just gave me some info, gave me a talking point, gave me something to leverage. So that's also a way to embrace technology. There's a vast resource. People make their information public. So if you want to know more about a person, feel free to scroll through there. They use it as if no one's watching. It's pretty crazy. So that back to small is big, or big is small. What was the first one? Small is big. When you get a message from somebody, please reply back. If you text them, if you've got a mobile phone, you really ought to be texting your team and the people that you're leading, especially that core team. Every Sunday, and I'll move on from this subject, but every Sunday when we have every Saturday before the Sunday, we're about to do the services stuff. I take everybody that's serving on the band and I send them a text message. And I'm like, hey, it's great to serve with you. Tomorrow's going to be awesome. These people are co-leading. Call time is this time. Just wanted to say, and I try to share a personal, authentic, nice thought. I'm so grateful to get to do this because I can't imagine doing something that I love more than this. Wow. And thanks for being on the journey with me. Blah, 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 something goofy, and then I put a GIF or something, and then they do GIF wars, and on that thread, it's just different memes and stuff, and it's fun, but that's also hey, the door code, and then I've got a text group for every Sunday morning, and they've become accustomed to it, and it's something we enjoy, because we'll send back jokes and forth. So that's a way to leverage some technology, and there's so much, we could talk for 2 hours about that. Probably the most important, as I've got 5 minutes left, let me hit two things very quickly. Collaboration is currency with the younger generation. They are open and desire partnership more than ever. In my non-church professional life, I do songwriting, and every song you've loved for the past 20 years has been written by more than one person. I mean, 99%, sure. And that's because the music industry, as songwriters, has embraced collaboration, and that's how they get the very best stuff. And collaboration is not what the builders and the boomers of Gen X wanted to do. They're the lone wolf, John Wayne kind of ministers, town's not big enough for the both of us. But you have to open your heart up to collaboration and realize that none of us is as awesome as all of us. Don't trivialize. Small things are big to them. Don't diminish things that are clearly important to them. And remember that they are socially defined. So as they get tore up over something that's been said in the media or that you brush off, it means a lot to them when they see the headlines and when they put something up and they're bullied in some way or whatever. My wife actually told me to add that because that was so prevalent in teenagers. They're so socially defined that it's easy to miss. It's an easy miss that the way that they engage on social media is the way that we engage real life. And so when things don't go well on social media, things don't go well in life. So I'm just saying, if you get the impression that it's something that you'd be like, dude, get over it, maybe humble yourself a little and realize that their identity, by and large, is socially defined and not personally defined. That's not good. We've got to help them be defined by the person of Jesus Christ. But that's true of every generation, right? Mm-hmm. Humble yourself and listen. Listen to their concerns, to their point of view, their suggestions and ideas. And finally, be authentic and transparent. The upcoming generations are naturally cynical and skeptical, and for good reason, based on what's happened in the last 50 years. Tell them about your current struggles and not just your back-in-the-day testimony. I can't stress that enough. I love that Steve leads the way with transparency. I'm often accredited for when people say, you know what I love about Jimmy, about leadership, or me on the platform, they're like, he is so transparent, like you know exactly what's going on. I credit a lot of that to Steve and Brian and them. Like I've seen them do it countless times, being transparent to the point of, oh, that hurts to share. Oh, we don't have to, do we have to be that candid about the way that the gospel affects our lives personally? It's like, yeah, and I think many of us are very willing to talk about the things that happened 30 years ago and not the things that happened 3 minutes ago. And I live in a bubble with the leadership here being great at that. None of us are perfect, but that's something they do great. They've always modeled that, right, Jim? I mean, you've been here forever and been around this. I mean, this is true. I'm not doing anything new, but I am capitalizing on it. Whenever I disciple people and do mentoring or do Bible studies, when we meet and have coffee, I'm meeting with a guy today, and it'd be so tempting to be like, why are you screwing up? Why are you, I remember when I was in high school and I got drunk, it's like, you need to talk to him about the bad decisions you make right now. And my bad decisions right now are not getting drunk, but I'm not a perfect person, and I have struggles too. And I feel like the more I open that curtain to this young man in particular, the more he leans in, and the more he's like, wow, you really are a real person. You really do care about me. And one thing I wished I'd known in high school was that cool is being unapologetically yourself. I don't know how I missed it. And this generation seems to get it. Like, they love the people that are unapologetically themselves. So if you're a car guy, be a car guy. If you love comic books, be comic books. If you want to wear a track jacket for no apparent reason, feel free to do so, because you're weird. But people will love you for it. And I feel like I feel like sometimes I'm super silly, and I'm like, you need to tone it back. It's like, no, just do whatever feels natural. Like, my lane is like, I can be serious, I can be silly, and I'm rarely in between. And I just kind of embrace that. I'm just as liable to get you crying and then pray for you. That's just the way that God made me. And I've come to embrace that. I remember coming to the river when I was 27. I was very nervous, and we'd be in meetings, and I was just trying to prove myself, or I'd say the wrong thing, and Steve would basically just chill, be cool, and I even told him once, I'm like, I'm actually pretty funny. I told him, and he was like, cool, okay. I didn't see that, but that's cool. And the more comfortable I've gotten in my own skin, the more consistently transparent I've been, the more I've kind of landed in that spot. And so I lead from that spot. I do communion, and people laugh. And they're not laughing at me, they're laughing with me, because they're like, that's true of Jimmy. And I remember I did a Good Friday sermon, and Brandon Reeves came up to me. He goes, you know what I love about that? It was like, it was just you. Like, you walked up from the chair, and then you got up and started speaking, and it was the same you. And that's my highest ambition in life, and that's what I leave you with, is I want to be the same person here and at the DMV. And I'm trying. I use the DMV as a joke because it's like Satan's butt. Nobody likes being there. It's the worst. And there's a lot. If you work at the DMV, I apologize. Or if your parents retired from the DMV, I'm sure I'll get an email about this. But there are spaces in life, like traffic jams. That's a better illustration, isn't it? That we all hate. But I want to be the same guy in the traffic jam. I want to be the same guy under pressure. I want to be the same guy on the mountaintop. I think this generation, more than any, values and appreciates authentic transparency and people just embracing who they are. And that's good news, because you don't have to fake to be somebody to connect with someone. You just be who you are. And my phrase I've been using lately is, God made you good. I say that all the time. When someone does a good job, they're like, yeah, and they're self-deprecating themselves. I'll grab by the shoulders. God made you good. He didn't make a mistake. He didn't mess up. What you're working with is exactly what God intended, and He loves you even now, and He's going to love you later. And what we know about the gospel is true, is that God doesn't love us in respect to what we do, good or bad, but in the person of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're trying to do with this next generation, is bring them into identity under Christ, and to say, I'm crucified with Christ. I no longer live, yet not I, but Christ lives in me. In the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God. Like, we want them to make that transition, and I feel like if you make small, intentional connections with transparency and authenticity, leading with passion and encouragement, that's going to get the ball rolling and connecting with the next generation. Amen.
So being authentic, I just want you to know I do like John Wayne.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. Being authentic, I think every generation craves certain things. I think there are threads. And I think the gospel speaks to every generation. That's what's so amazing to me. I mean, Christ calls us to be who we are in Him, and He calls us not to have to be somebody we're not. And I think, Jimmy, that point you made is something all of us need to hear. We don't have to start dressing a certain way to connect. We don't have to start pretending like we're somebody we're not. My kids make fun of me. They know I'll never be hip and cool. I'll never get to that point. I don't even understand fashion. I can't. My 4-year-old one day, I was walking out the door, and my 4-year-old looked at me and she said, "Dad, you're not wearing that out there, are you?" I was like, "Well, I was." She's like, "That doesn't match." I was like, "Okay, I have no sense of any of that, And so, for me, this is a great generation to get to pour into, because if they genuinely don't care, then I'm in a good spot. Right? So, I want to invite a couple of guys. Y'all come on up. I want y'all to each introduce yourselves. Each of you introduce yourself and where you grew up, your name, what year you're in. All of them tech, right? Yep. What year you're in, and maybe just how long you've been a follower of Christ. If you grew up in church or you didn't. And then we just want to have a chance to kind of, Jimmy said, hey, we want to learn from you. We want to learn from you guys as far as, what is it your peers are saying? What is it you see the church could do differently? What is it that you see are areas that we may be missing? And I think sometimes each generation, there's like this big neon sign that's flashing saying, awake, you're missing this. And because we're not in that generation, we don't see it as clearly as you do. Yeah. I think my generation had some things that were, we call them the worship battles. You guys don't even understand that today. But 20 years ago, to bring a guitar and a set of drums, especially in a Baptist church on stage, was a battle. The video projector was a battle. We've almost come to the point now where technology is being embraced universally in the church. But those were some battles that were fought in my generation, And I think if we could go back 30 years and help people understand, really, guys, you need to know that the style of worship is going to change. If you'll embrace it now, you'll reach the next generation. If you push it away, they'll all, what I would say is, they'll all leave Baptist churches to be non-denominational, which is what happened, And which, as one person said, we know non-denominational churches are really Baptist churches with cooler websites, See? All right. So I'm just gonna kind of moderate. Who's got a question? And well, after they introduce themselves, if you have a question, I'm just gonna sit down. Y'all just ask questions. Okay. Introduce yourselves and go for it.
Cool. I'm Brady O'Brien. I'm from Greenbrier, Tennessee, which is a little farming town about 30 miles outside of Nashville. I didn't really grow up going to church. My mom went to church as a kid, was really hurt by the church at like an early age, and my dad grew up in the Northeast in a really small town that had, I always say, had one church and 6 bars for 500 people, so it was an interesting place. But he didn't really know what the gospel was. And then my mom, as she grew older, always wanted like her kids to go to church, so we went to church. And I was saved when I was 12 and kind of figured out what that meant and figured out like what Jesus really is for me. And yeah, now I'm here in Cookeville of all places, somewhere I didn't think I'd end up, but a place that God has given me the opportunity to find communities like this and find a community that really loves Jesus authentically and not just superficially.
Yeah.
Which is a big thing that you guys can learn is authentic love for Jesus, and not superficial love.
Awesome. My name is Andrew. Andrew Braystead. I just did the same way you did the first time.
I told
You have to
myself
do it
I'm
as
not
well.
doing it.
I'm not doing it. I'm not going to be like him. I'm from Spring Hill, Tennessee, which is rich white suburbia south of Nashville. That's all there is. I kind of hate it coming here. Like it's kind of a little bit different being in a college town. It's really great. I grew up Christian family. Both my parents actually were their parents, so my grandparents are not Christian. So they both found it later in life. And so that was an interesting dynamic growing up. As they were growing in their faith, I was also growing in my faith. Like, kind of when I started to get serious about it, they also got serious about it. We always went to church together, but when they really started taking it seriously was also when I really started taking it seriously. So that was a little weird growing up, but yeah, I'm at Tech. I'm a manufacturing engineering major and play the drums at the gathering and do all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I love it here in Cookeville and love doing ministry here. So.
I'm Eric Pardue. I thought about swapping that just to do the bond thing. Yeah, I'm from Mount Juliet, Tennessee. I know a lot of people might know it. It's near Lebanon. I find that the feeling there is that it's an in-between of what they both experience in terms of you're exposed to the agricultural type of society, but you also have this emerging feeling of upper middle class. That's a really specific demographic.
Yeah.
I feel like, is that like efficient? I'm 20 years old. I'm a sophomore at Tennessee Tech. I'm studying business. I actually wanted to ask you about picking a specific major later. Because I'm about to make that decision. I have an eye for ministry right now. I currently work as a youth ministry associate, which is the role of student pastor without the title, basically, in a place called Watertown, Tennessee, which is closer to the agricultural end. There's about like 40-ish students there. So it's really awesome to get that ministry experience at a young age. So I was really excited to be here. So what was the other stuff? Business. Age.
How you came to faith in Christ?
How I came to faith in Christ, yeah. So I grew up with parents who were heavily involved in the church. My dad was a deacon at a young age, considering, and we started moving around, and then he kind of got bored of that role. So I as an adult conscious child of what my parents are, their level of involvement in church was limited involvement because they had already kind of done it and got burned out a little bit. So I was always at church camp, I was always at the discipleship weekends, I was always at youth, heavily involved, and I feel like that contributed to pointing me to Christ, but I don't feel like I truly got an understanding of it or became familiar with the concepts of it until freshman year of college. So about 2 years now, I would call myself a genuine Christian, but I've been exposed to Christianity for basically my whole life.
Okay.
I would say similar thing to him, yeah, as well.
Very similar.
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of how it runs. Is like you're definitely exposed to Christianity. You might even be in church and going. I mean, I went to, like Eric, I went to church camp every single summer from kindergarten to probably now, honestly, and every winter retreat, everything like that. And it was like, it's still. I didn't really take it as my own and really start following it. And that does kind of make sense because when you become an adult, it becomes your own faith. It's not based off your parents. But that is something that's hard to, I think, instill is getting people to take it for their own, not take it like, oh, yeah, I have this faith because my pastor has this faith, or I have this faith because my parents have this faith, or my friend has this faith. Like, no, I have this faith because of what I've seen and what I've seen the Lord do in my life. So I think that's something for our generation that's different. Is like we see some people, talking to a guy today who was a drug addict 2 months ago, and we're talking to people about Jesus at Poets today. Like, some people, it's just a switch like that, and they are chasing fully after Jesus, and that's amazing. But for other people, it's like a build-up and a craziness. Like, they've been around Christianity forever, but it doesn't really ever click for them and become real and become their life and become who they are and their identity until that one person that comes in their life, or that one friend group, or that one Bible study, or that one church that's just extra special for them and really pushes them over that limit. That's what I've seen in our age group, it seems like.
Did you say you got to talk to people after I left?
Yeah.
You go to class. We were at Poets this morning. We had this whole Bible study thing, reading Your Christianity. I leave, and now you get to talk to other people.
So we go to Poets, have this Bible study, and there's a new guy there, really awesome dude, and talking to him, and I had to go to class, so I had to leave early, go to class, and it's canceled. And so I'm like, okay, that's cool. So I go back. Yeah, literally, no, very much so. Like, I was really bummed because this guy's awesome, and was just really getting a chance to encourage him, and I was like, this feels right. Like, I probably shouldn't skip class. I should probably go to class. Come back, get to keep talking to him, and then the other guys that were there left, and it's just me and him, get to have one-on-one conversation. Just literally just having the most amazing encouragement both ways, and then some other guys come to us and start asking us questions and talking to us about Jesus. So it was literally like God was like, oh, you thought you didn't have time? Here's all the time that you need to do exactly what I want you to do. So yeah, it's really cool. The one thing I was thinking about when Brian asked us to come do this is like, I think a lot of times for us and people of our age, we really like to meet people in an organic way, and we like to meet people in groups. It's pretty awkward. You guys chime in here. It's pretty awkward to go meet somebody one-on-one and have a conversation with them one-on-one, and that's all that happens. You know what I mean? It's very natural to invite somebody to a group of friends, or say like, hey man, me and all my buddies from Bible study are going rock climbing this weekend if you want to come. Or we're going hiking, or we're going to, like, me and my friends are going to do this. Would you like to come? It's so easy to invite people to that, and it's so easy for people to say yes to that, because it's not awkward. They don't feel like they have to be, like, know all of the Bible or anything like that. They can just come and be who they are and have a good time. And then once they get in, they're like, wow, these guys are really cool. There's something different about them. That's when they start asking questions, and when they're like, huh, Christianity is not what I thought it was. It's not what it looked like from the outside, because you've got all of this like group of people that they're meeting all together. That's like the way that we've Eric and I have a Bible study with a bunch of guys, and that's how it started. Just friends getting together, like, we should read the Bible together. Okay, cool. That's how we would just be like, hey, you want to come hang out with me and my friends and read the Bible? They're like, yeah, sure. We're going hiking. You guys want to go hiking with us? They become friends. They become Christians. They get saved. It's awesome. It's like a system like that, and it works great. It honestly does.
Yeah, like our generation has, I call it internet knowledge. They have a base level knowledge about a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because the internet was different in the 90s, and it is way different now, and it is a vast pool of infinite knowledge. You can learn anything. It feels like sometimes that you can learn more than they can teach you, or more than people can like really pour into you, because it's just that's true. But yeah, so people, instead of craving from the church just this base level knowledge, because like people can look up Christianity on Wikipedia and realize that there was this dude who loved people, died on a cross, and they think that he raised from the dead, right? People get that. People get the simple things, right? But what people want to see is the authenticity that Jesus lived his life with, right? Because they read the Bible and they see that Jesus, walked with. I lead a Bible study as well, and we talk about how crazy it is that Jesus chose these 12 whack dudes who were all from completely separate backgrounds, and it makes no sense, right? And that's what I think our generation wants to see from the church, is that we band together regardless of who we are, our socioeconomic status, our race, our cultural background, our raising. Like, no matter if you're if you're from Sparta, if you're from Monterey, if you're from Timbuktu, like we don't really care. We just want to build an authentic community of Jesus. And ways we can do that is like inviting people to things that are not just church activities. And I feel like a lot of times as believers in this fast generation that we live in, where like every minute is, like I say now that Americans value money and time as kind of this like even level playing field where like our time is worth just as much, like it has a quantitative value, not just a qualitative value. It's like when we give people our time, and we give this generation our time when it's so fast moving, and we invite people to enter our space, they see that that is different.
Yep.
Because the world, like anyone can shoot anyone a text message, anyone can shoot anyone something on Facebook, anyone can shoot anyone anything on Instagram, like all that quick transmission stuff like helps, but like when you are truly authentic and truly meeting people, that is when change occurs, and that is when people want to know about Jesus more. It's not like just this little sprinkle of Jesus. It's like they want to know.
Yeah.
I think it's a benefit too, like social media offers like a superficial interaction with other people. So like maybe people, if you think about the amount of satisfaction our generation will probably get from social media and thinking they've satisfied their communicate with other people level throughout the day, that genuality and like, I don't know if that's a word, the community, the genuine community, like that is amplified. So like that's a lot of thing I think older generations do a lot better. I was thinking recently about like World War II, you know, the painted picture is how in union the entire country was on one thing. But like today, I'd probably bet $100 that would not happen. Because one, people have, like you mentioned earlier, people have segregated into these different groups of like, they're being themselves, but that also means they're finding other people who are just like them. So you're more likely to group with those people. So you don't have a mass of people grouping as like impersonating one image. So like if you all trying to be the cool guy, now you got like 30 cool guys that think they're a group, and so now they think in unison and move. But instead now you have like 3 groups of 10 people who all have their own thing. And like a thing to take away from that is like diversity in leadership is very important. Having different personality types that people interact with. Because if you have more people who are different, you reach more different people. You can reach people who are a little more on the spectrum of odd or weird by having someone who's odd or weird that you're discipling. And this is something I'm currently thinking about, is that I might not have a heart for certain groups of people, but if I can find someone who I can minister to and disciple, who does have that heart for those people get reached anyway. And I don't have to feel like it's something I'm not genuinely pursuing because it's not my natural like inclination. So the benefit of community is like the same standard of effort we would put into a church throughout time, I would say. But now it means more because it feels more genuine.
Yeah.
And it's important to have diverse opportunities. I know my youth ministry at home, we focused a lot on the sports guy age. Like that was the target audience, was athletic men, because like naturally kind of women flock to it and things like that. So if you have a lot of the cool popular kids, then you have that. But now imagine if we had just a bunch of college athlete leaders. Now you're only reaching athletic kids, and you're not reaching the kid who likes the program, you're not reaching the kid who likes music. So it's important to have diverse leaders to reach those different groups.
Yeah.
Because you can have a 6th grade group of the kids who you know are going to be programmers, you know they love math, and they don't like talking to people in groups. You have that group of people, they'll talk to each other, but they don't want to talk to other groups. And then on the other end, you might have an 11th grade group that's like, it's half the baseball team, and you've got maybe one theater kid who feels out, you know? But in that ministry, it's the same ministry, we still have the same target, but because our leaders are different, we've now reached 2 whole different groups of people, and that makes a diverse body.
How do you guys deal with, I think what I've seen lately is this issue of like where the younger generation finds like what they consider spiritual. Like I think they can find that in music or in nature or in a group of friends. Like that. It's not like genuine spirituality. It's not found in Christ, but they think they're being spiritual. They think they're finding a fulfillment. Do you agree with that? Like,
I recently saw a thing, it was a YouTube documentary about this guy who has a following of about 2,000 people. And what he offers is like what I would call nothing, but painted like in a pretty way and vague enough to where you think it's spiritual. So he's got this following of people. The main thing he sells is silence. If you had like one of the things they do, they have like basically a dance party where no one talks to anyone. It's weird, but people are like, oh, it's so like, he's so wise, you know, like there's so much power in nothing, like there's such nothing. So like anything that is very vague and then painted as like, he uses weird words. Like they interviewed a lot of the people sitting there and they're like, oh, I don't really know what he's talking about, but like, I just feel it.
Yeah.
Like, so if people feel something, then they're like, oh, that's so spiritual, that's so deep. Which, I mean, watching that video, I was in disgust, because I was like, oh my gosh. Like, there's like a group of people in the Netherlands, I don't even know the guy's name, but he offers nothing, he doesn't offer anything productive to change anyone's lives, yet he still reaches people who need life change.
Right.
And he's just there because they think it's spiritual.
Yeah, I think anybody can, go out in nature. Like I really like the outdoors and outdoorsy, and I like all that stuff. But I think anybody can go out in nature, look at a sunset, and be like, wow. And they can have like you said, a spiritual experience. Like this is a little bit bigger than me. Even if they don't believe in God, even if they're not a Christian, like they can be like, wow, like this is a beautiful sunset. The world is pretty. Like this is cool. But like you said, they're not accrediting that to God, and that's what the spirituality of it is. Like, wow, God, like you created this for my benefit, for my pleasure. You had mercy on me enough to create something beautiful for me to understand. And I think a lot of times we can use, like especially people who aren't Christian or people who like don't really have that spiritual side of it figured out. They can emulate what other people are saying. So they're like, I feel like God is leading me here, when they haven't actually talked to God at all. Right. They haven't prayed, they haven't even opened their mind to listen. And another thing is that I think as our generation, we love to tell God all these things. God, please, would you open up this for me? Would you let me know what I'm supposed to do next? I know it might just be the age that we're at right now, being around 20, where we're always wanting to know what's next. Like, God, what are you leading me towards? What should I be preparing for? What is my journey look like? And that's like where the spirituality comes in. But people, instead of praying and asking and listening and like actually sitting there in a prayer time for 20 minutes and just listening and just like trying to see what God is trying to say through us, or trying to tell us, we pray and we say, God, would you please just let me know where you want me to go, and thanks, amen. And then that's just over like that. Like I know I used to do that so much, and I have friends that they do that same thing. Like, I'm just not hearing from God. I'm like, are you listening? They're like, well, no, I'm not actually. And like, well, like when you're praying, like, what are you thinking about? It's like, well, my mind just wanders. I'm like, well, I mean, that's not necessarily helpful, that your mind is just wandering. And I feel like if we're not open to listening to God, then we can't have these spiritual experiences. So for our generation, it's just slowing down and taking that chance to listen, and taking that chance to go out into nature and give God credit for it, and listen and see how God is trying to show His love through that beautiful picture that He's painted, that beautiful sunset that He's showing us.
People are calling God on a burner phone. You call Him, you say, hey, get back to me. And chucks it, destroys it, and forgets about it. And then they don't ever position themselves. And that's a benefit of this seeking of spirituality. If you could play on that of hey, listen and do nothing, and then they're like, oh, that is spiritual. Which I mean it very much is, and that's what it genuinely is, but it gives them the satisfaction of the people who want the nothing and the silence and the sitting there and thinking. It gives them that, but now it's in the way that actually benefits them. Instead of just sitting there and actually doing nothing.
Yeah.
For you guys, so in this room we've got church planners, a couple pastors that have been doing it for a long time. Some guys are about to launch out. Some people are just leaving when I talk. We've got all kinds of different folks. Each of you, if you would, you know, you have a lot of guys that were in your youth group that are no longer in church, that have walked away, I'm sure.
Yeah.
What would you say to us to say, hey, man, this is what I'm hearing from my peers, why they're walking away. This is a neon sign that the church should be noticing, like, guys. So, for example, one that I feel like, I don't think this group in here perhaps has a problem with, but one that I want to shout from the mountaintops is quit saying anything about politics. You know, it's like, there's nothing biblically beneficial, in my humble opinion, about picking a side, either side, or anything. I feel like what I'm hearing,
It's all toxic.
it's just toxic.
Yeah.
It's just toxic. It's
Very much so.
it derails people from what we're trying to get them to focus on, which is Christ. What do you guys see? What could you say to us? Like, hey, y'all might not have thought of this, but and even even you guys come to the river. I mean, you may be talking amongst your peers, going, "How come they don't get this? How come they don't realize this is such a turnoff from my peers that I'm bringing from college, or this is a great point?" So,
I come from a subcultural background of, like, I'm involved in hardcore punk music, right? Which is like this weird thing that no one understands, and it's cool, and it's whatever. If someone is involved in that, it's awesome. But like, but like, because of that, a lot of people that are involved in that are very socially and politically involved, and a lot of people ask me questions about Christian ethics or Christian politics or the social gospel, as I hear it phrased a lot, like what Jesus says. And what we have to realize as the church is that it is okay to answer those questions, but we can in no way put ourselves in front of Jesus, right? We can in no way put our own opinion in front of what Jesus says, right? And if we're like truly inspired by God, then that should be our opinion anyway, right? And if we're like truly seeking Jesus, that should, like, our politics and all things should be influenced by that, right? But so not to say that, like, we shouldn't talk about that, but we just have to be very careful about what we say, right? Where we're not defined by, and some people may be defined by party lines, but where we're not defined by our party lines, but instead we are wholly and completely identified purely by the work that Jesus did, right? And the work that we are to love others, and we are to show people the love of Jesus, and do everything in our power to do that, right? And that is what politics is, I guess, for us, and that is what social justice is for us, is the love of Jesus, right?
Yeah.
And nothing else. It's not like, you know, people try to quantify social justice as a bunch of different things, but as Christians, it is us showing the love of Jesus wholeheartedly and fully in our lives, and not like attempting to cover that up with whatever politics are in our face. Because, like, a lot of people think that the church is afraid to answer big questions, and the church has become afraid to answer, like, big questions like homosexuality, big questions like suicide, big questions like immigration, big questions like that. And, like, Jesus doesn't have direct opinions on all of that stuff, or, like, all of, like, the answers to everything. And, like, even us as a church, we may not have the perfect answer that people always want to hear, but people still care that we give them an authentic opinion about what we have, and not just this superficial thing where we're like, you know,
We're not going to talk about
we're just gonna, like, put that back, right? The church has done that for generations, where they put stuff in the back door and it comes to bite them in the butt later on, I think. But
Yeah. I was going to answer that question real quick. I think about the parable of the sower. So we've got the seed landing in different types of soil, like good soil and the rock, and then it lands and it doesn't get the right roots, and so it grows up and it shrivels, and it lands, and the weeds, the thorns get it out. And so one thing I think of is sometimes we try so hard to mold the gospel into something that it's not, into something that the Christianity is easy, and that it's going to solve all of your problems, and that you're not going to struggle with anything, and no one's ever going to persecute you, and all this stuff. And in a way, that gets people in. They're like, hey, like, you struggle with depression? Like, Jesus is the answer for that. He absolutely is. Jesus can absolutely heal people of depression. But the thing is, just because they have said they become a Christian and that kind of thing doesn't mean that they're not going to struggle with depression in the future. And so we're setting people up for failure in that, not that we promise too high of God, but we don't make them aware of the dangers of being a Christian, and that everything is not going to be perfect, and that you're absolutely still going to mess up and still going to sin, and but that when you do, you're struggling against that sin and you're repenting and you're going to God with that, rather than to yourself like you did before. And so that's what I've seen in people, is that they get to it and they're like, this is too hard, this is not what I signed up for. I didn't know that people were going to look at me weird and people were going to persecute me, and I didn't know that people hated Christians in other parts of the world, and that all of my friends would stop being friends with me because I'm Christian now, and that this is going to be this hard. And so I think it's something hard, but it's like not being ashamed of the gospel is like huge. That's something that I've been learning a lot lately, is that God made the gospel for us, and he didn't make it for us to preach little parts and bits and pieces of it that bring people in, because that brings people in and then they just go right back out, because they're like, whoa, wait, what is he doing? He's doing something spiritual. I don't understand that. I've never heard about that. Nobody ever told me about that. I don't want to be around that. Or wait, what do you mean? You mean I got to read my Bible every day? Or like, why do I have to do that? That doesn't make any sense. You mean I have to like give up my own pride in order to like really pursue God? That I thought I just had to go to church on Sundays. You know, it's the false sense of what Christianity is. And then once they get a little taste of it, they're like, this community is cool. These people actually, love me. But then they get the sense of the heart, and the thorns come, and the weeds come, and they're suppressed, and they go out. So
I think another thing is like the superficial understanding that Brady talked about. Like people today know a little about a lot. And an exercise that's always fun in churches, which I feel like never efficiently turns out correctly, is like, what do people who don't believe think about Christians or Jesus? And then you ask a bunch of people who already know about or are Christians. And so it's like you're surveying the wrong group. We did that activity with Josiah.
Yeah.
And we tried our best, but in reality, like my genuine perception of what other people think should be coming from the other people and not from me.
Yeah.
And something I see a lot is like, I don't necessarily see it, but I feel, because obviously I'm not the other person, but I feel like a lot of people feel that Christianity is like rules, and if you don't follow the rules, then you better stay quiet and you better not share with anybody, because judgments are coming, and they've heard it from their grandparents, they've heard the fire and brimstone, like we've got the afterburn of fire and brimstone in the generation of like, well, I don't want Christianity because I'm not perfect, or I don't want to talk about stuff because I'm not perfect. And I think it's important to stress that. And like you were asking about what drives people away. I feel like a lot of times it's the thought of like, I can't go to church because I don't qualify. Like they feel like when you show up, you get an application, fill it out, and you say, huh? And then if
come back.
And the sad thing is some churches, people feel like that happens. They throw their application out there, and then the thing they get from guest services is like, oh, I think my application got denied because I don't feel like I'm part of this community. I didn't feel a connection here. And so like that, having diverse people greeting the guest services, people really want to meet. And so I think the statistic I hear a lot is like it takes like less than 5 minutes for someone to decide whether or not they're going back to your church. Something along the lines of that. Like from the parking lot to the door is oftentimes when people make the decision. So it doesn't matter how good the preacher is oftentimes, it doesn't matter how good your worship is, it doesn't matter how good your like concession area is. It matters like how genuine you are and accepting you are, and like having that diverse group of people as an example is very important. And something I saw drive a friend away. When I grew up in ministry, I had like a best friend. His name was Mark. We were best friends since like 3rd grade, and the running thing was like every time you saw us together, it was like, oh yeah, it's those two guys, And then what happened was, at one point, like I kept running and he kind of stopped, and so then he gets carried along though because we're associated. So now he has this like fake buildup of he's further than he is, and so now it's harder for him to actually catch up because now he's got to fake it, And so he gets to college and doesn't go to church anything. It takes me a while to start thinking about inviting him, but then I think without ever actually inquiring of him, I feel like his perception of like, I'm actually not lived up to where you think I am, and I don't qualify to be in your group. So I'm gonna brush you off and say nice things like, oh, I think I'm busy, maybe I have a test, stuff like that. But in reality, I think there's a perception of like Christians think they're better. Christians have to follow rules. They have to be qualified to be a part of this, and I don't fit that, so I'm not in.
Yeah. Just real quick, I wanted to touch on something you said that I was thinking about is like the idea of our parents or our grandparents, like that. I can remember growing up, my parents never really told me like what they struggled with, like what their sin they were dealing with was,
I
or
still have no idea.
I actually called my mom. Like, yeah, thank God that God called, like, pushed me to say this. I talked to my mom. I said, hey, next time we come home, I want to talk to you guys about like what your faith journeys were like and what your sin was like and what you are struggling with, because I have no idea those things. And so I think similar for you too, I'm sure, like for our age, like our parents, so I think it started with the grandparents. The grandparents were perfect, legalistic, they were religious. If you have sex before marriage, you are a heathen, you have no place in the church. If you do any of this kind of stuff, you're a heathen, you have no place in the church. So they have that belief, maybe because their parents pressed on them. So then our parents have a little bit of that, and they have that sort of feeling that that's not really okay. We don't want to be like that. If their parents were moral or in the South, because we're in the South. And so our parents wouldn't share those things with us because they were still uncomfortable about them themselves. And I think that's something that our generation craves so much. Again, we keep saying authenticity, but if somebody, and we see this every single time in like our Bible study settings, is like somebody will say, hey guys, I'm struggling with porn. It's killing me. Like I can't go a day without watching it. And then everybody else is like, blah. Like it's like one person throws up in the middle of the room and then everybody throws up in the room. Terrible analogy, but seriously, like for our generation, it takes one person to get serious and one person to be honest and open for literally everybody. Everybody will be like, yeah man, me too. Or dude, this is what I'm going through, dude. I'm depressed, dude. I can't stop drinking. Like it's literally as one person becomes honest, all become honest. I don't know if that's similar for y'all's generation, but that is always rings true in our generation. And I think if that started with our parents saying, hey, this is what I struggled with when I was your age. Don't do that. It sucks. Like, hey, don't watch porn. It's going to rule your life for 5-6 years, all right? Like, that is not good. That is terrible. Let me tell you how I got through this. Like, if our parents had those conversations with us, then we wouldn't have had to go through that period. Like Jimmy was saying, like, build up on my failures. Like, that's the kind of parent I want to be. That's the kind of minister I want to be. That's the kind of reflection of Jesus I want to be. Is like, hey, here's how I've failed in the past. Don't make the same mistakes. Like, build off of my failures. And then when I'm honest about what I'm struggling with, like he said, not 10 years ago, not 5 years ago, but now, like everybody else is going to want to be honest with what they're struggling with. And I think that's when people are truly welcomed into the church and stay in the church, is when they're honest about what they're dealing with, and then they realize, wait a minute, these people aren't perfect, these people are broken, but they know where the healing is.
Right.
And I want that healing.
Right.
And that's what I think keeps people in, is the honesty and the transparency, like you said as well.
If I could connect to that, I feel like a lot of times we feel like we need to have people stand on the shoulders of our greatness. Like we would never say that, but it's like we look at what we bring to the table, and we like, I want my son to have my good qualities and then some. But what he needs from me is my mishaps, because his gifts are going to find him. Mm-hmm. Like you want to presume that people are going to know the good qualities and their callings and their talents and giftings, and so you don't have to be like, do it like me in these ways that I win. It's like, don't do it like I did in these ways that I lost, because the strengths are going to find them. They're of course there's, yeah. I think that's the way that I see the most traction with people that I'm leading, is instead of trying to make them a worship leader like me, I'm just telling them the way that I've failed as a husband or a father or a brother, you know, and if you can dodge that, I think you'll be better off. And the rest of it kind of works itself out, you know.
I think Gary and Tony had questions.
It's that moment passed. Go for it.
So, connecting to what you kind of were just talking about, especially parent-related things, I feel like a lot of young people I know, and I'm in that middle ground. I'm not Jimmy's age. I'm the younger end of the millennials, so I'm almost into your guys' age range. Some people are calling us ex-ennials because we're so much in the middle that we can kind of lean both ways with it.
That's what I would call us too. We're kind of
it's
right
a weird
after
place to be.
millennials, but like we're not as socially dependent on our phones as the Z's are.
Aspiring millennials.
Yeah, we're aspiring. That's right. Yeah.
So I know for me, and growing up in church, growing up with parents, sounding similar to you guys, I knew some of the things my dad dealt with when he was young because he would caution us. When I was your age, I did, But as far as like when my dad was raising us, I had no idea what he was doing with his life.
Yeah, he's perfect.
As far as I knew, he was this hardworking dad who went out every day and built his business. But the one thing I did know is that my dad was a workaholic, and so I never saw him as much as I should have. So there was this absence that was created in my life where there should have been a father figure, but there wasn't.
Yeah.
And there were some different moments in life. One that finally made him realize that he was being absent as well, and that's when some things started to change. But would you guys say with the young people you're dealing with, because so many of their parents are career oriented and are trying to get out there and build some things, that absence is present and it's created a need for an experience, because experience is big with our generation. 50 years ago, if you wanted to go get pizza, you wanted to know where the best place in town was. You didn't care if it was a hole in the wall, and you didn't care anything about what the place looked like, if it was dimly lit with a single light bulb. You just wanted the best pizza in town. Now people want the experience.
Yeah.
They not only want the pizza to be good, but they want it to be served in a unique way. They want there to be this cool atmosphere, and there's this craving for experience. And would you say that in what you guys are doing right now, what you're seeing, that with this generation, that experience couples with that authenticity and that transparency, because they didn't get that experience with their family. They didn't get it with their parents. They didn't get it with the role models who should have been those initial role models in their lives. And so now they're looking for other people to have this experience. Like, I've never really connected with somebody on a deep level where they're willing to tell me what's really going on in here and in here about their own struggles, because that was always kept behind that glass door. I could sort of see him, but not really. It's kind of like one of those shower doors where you're like, I can see something's on the other side of that, but I don't know what it is. And so it's because of that, now we've got this moment where people are getting transparent, and it's creating that experience. And would you say that's creating a stick that makes people want to keep coming back?
Definitely. I think of, we had 3 weeks ago, we had, was it 3 weeks ago for more?
Yes.
We had one of my roommates made shrimp boil, and the other one, I made jambalaya. We made a ton of food. It was like our big push to invite guys who aren't Christians to we have a big house and a big basement. And
this was a come be a friend, not come be a Christian.
Yeah, exactly. Come have some food. It's free. We all piled money together, and these two guys came there. They're both football players, and they're both I would say not Christians. And when they came in, it was like they come in, they eat. That's cool. We usually do icebreaker questions, which always work so well. Like, we'll do really silly ones, like what's the weirdest thing that happened to you this week. We'll do like would you rather questions, and then we'll do like one serious one, like what's God up to in your life or something like that. But we all get really laughing, and this is when I'm talking about bringing people into a group of friends that's already established. And if everybody's welcoming, it's the best thing in the world, because they feel so at home and they feel so welcomed. So we're getting them laughing, they're having a good time, and then we start reading the Bible, and one of the guys starts talking and opens up, and then the other guys are like, "What? They're opening up about this? This is weird." And then they open up, and one of the guys is like, "It's like, yeah, I've got a kid at home, and I'm not married, and she's my fiance, but we're gonna get married soon." And I'm thinking, one of my buddies was saying this. I'm thinking that most any other time he tells people that I have a kid and he's in college and doesn't have a ring on his finger, people would probably say, "Oh, you have a kid? Yeah. Really? How's that going for you? Is that rough? Your wife is where? She's not? You don't have one? Oh, wow. Instead of that, it was like, oh man, all right, that's cool. What's his name? What's he like to do? You know, like that kind of thing. Rather than sin, really? Sin is ugly. Sin is ugly, yes. But if we can see through that sin and love the person, that means so much to those people. And I think you're so right at that. Is like those guys had never, like, one, probably been that open with somebody. They opened up about some other things. And two, had the reaction be, okay, man, yeah, let's work on it. Let's do something about it. Like I'm struggling with this. Like, all right, man. Like, let's here's what the Bible says about it. I've struggled with it too. Here's what I did to overcome it. Like, rather than being met with, they're met with, yeah, all right. Like, let's work with it. You know. And I think that's something again that keeps people in, because they're met with love. They're not met with condemnation.
And one of the things one of those guys said, specifically the guy with the kid, said he just wanted to be a good dad because he didn't have a dad that was like that. He said he wanted to be a good role model. He wanted to be like a good Christian. He wanted to have his kids in church. And so even despite not having that role, it was something that was desired. And a lot of times, so I think it's about 2010 is when there's like the divorce law in all 50 states where you can get divorced for no reason in basically like one day. And that affected our generation heavily. This is something at Passion, Louis Giglio talked about. He said there's two key moments: the creation of the iPhone and that divorce law passing. Because a lot of kids these days, the interaction they have with their father is either they only spend time with their father and no mother, or you have 2 days of the weekend with your dad, or you have no dad at all. And so a lot of times you'll talk to someone like someone whose parents are divorced who's come to Christ and is like a devoted Christian. They have someone who was a part of the church that was older, where they can say, that guy was like my dad, like that's who I wanted. So something people desire is older wisdom, and they might not even know it, they'll probably never say it, but what you always want is someone to be like your dad and to influence you and guide you in that way, and that means a lot to people. And it's that desire in all of us to have a dad, you know, and a lot of people are deprived of that.
I think that's kind of root in, like, from both sides. Like, my dad specifically was like, his dad was a perfectionist, right? And there's a lot to unpack there, but like his dad, perfect. If it wasn't perfect, it wasn't good enough, and that kind of like trickles down into my dad. And so because of that, he strives for perfection, and he strives for himself to look perfect. Like, our generation doesn't care about perfection, right? We don't care about having. We care about influencing the world and doing good in the world, and we realize the world is screwed up. Like, we see it all the time. We see it on the screen. We see it when we, like, on the radio. Like, we hear from people like we know the world is screwed up, and like
there's no innocence.
Because our parents have strived for so much perfection, they've lost honesty, like, with themselves. Like, they make themselves try to look so perfect that they're just like, they're so dishonest with like their own children, or just like with people that are younger than them, because they think that they're so afraid that their kids will see something wrong in them and that will influence the kid to do that wrong thing, right? When that is not true at all. Like, usually when you see kids get in like horrible situations, it's because of their parents' dishonesty with them and being like the world is this horrible place and you should just avoid it at all costs. Instead, it should be like, man, like, my dad struggled with alcoholism. I didn't know that until I was like 14 or 15 years old, and then he opened up and he told me about it, and because of that, I don't struggle with that, because he was honest with me and he was honest with like the situation, instead of just being like, you know, holding the crucifix up to the beer bottle and being like, oh, this is so bad, like, stay away from this. Like, instead he was like, this is how this stuff can affect you, and this is how it's affected our family for generations, and this is why I want you to know, and I care about you enough to tell you this, right? And that's where we should get to, and that's what our generation craves, is caring enough about you specifically, not just the church body and not just like the church, the big C church, but caring about you individually and what you are struggling with and how this affects you. It affects everyone or your generation, but how it affects you specifically.
I think it's more important to us. Like, I think the statement, God loves everyone, is a statement that's flawed. Like, the statement that God loves you is a statement that is more true and is more impactful for our generation. That, like, okay, yes, God absolutely does love everyone, but He loves us. He loves me individually for who I am, and He's given me specific gifts. Like, putting, like Brady said, like, the care and the intention of being known and being known for who you are is, like, so important for our generation. Like, for those people to be known who they are in the truest form, including their sin, is when they really feel loved the most and they feel a part of a community, is when they are truly known rather than known like what their social media says. And that's the social media and the Instagram and the Facebook and all that stuff is taking away from that truly knowing, and it's pulling that out of people. It really is. And like, that's why this face-to-face community in a Bible study, in a friendship is like so important for our generation, because it, like Eric was saying, it's created like a divide, so that is even more special to have a big friend group that spends time together and reads the Bible together, because people are just talking on the internet. People aren't actually getting real with each other, and text message is so easy that like this face-to-face conversation has so much power and so much potency for us, because we're not getting it, and it's not like it's not a usual, it's not a norm like I'd say it would be for y'all's generation. But
something you said that was important. You said, sorry, you said, I just want to expound on the you part.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of times overarching statements like God loves everyone, even though everyone means every person, me hearing that might take myself and remove myself and say God loves everyone. I'm over here. But me, exactly. So part of that might be the fact, my mom's a first grade teacher, and if you ask her, every parent thinks their kid is above average. Sure. And your whole life growing up, especially our generation, you hear you're unique, you're special, you're different. And even if the class average is a 70 and you get a 70, well, you're special still. Like, you're not average, you're above average, even though you did average. And so that part of that, like, naturally being exempted from the group and saying you're a unique individual. So overarching statements like God loves everyone means a little less, because I'm an individual, I'm special, I'm different. I'm not like everyone else.
yeah.
You just hear them say, they've been told, you're unique, you're special, you're different. I just leaned over to Bill, I was like, I was told, shut up, sit down, behave. And it's not that it's better or less or different. Don't read too far into that. That's just crazy different.
Right, and I whispered to him, and I said, and I was told, you can do better.
You can do
whatever
better.
it is, you can do better.
Yeah,
you can do better than that. And it is there are those generational differences, and usually it's a pendulum, right? I don't know if I'll be curious to hear from your generation, but I mean, I feel like we've swung too far to where we've totally tried to affirm everybody and everything, and the running joke for us is, oh, everybody gets a trophy if they play soccer.
Yep.
And like, we just went to a Lego competition for my son, and they sat there and it was pretty awesome.
No, I was laughing about
Are you
parents.
watching Lego robotics? Are you picking out geeks? No. But they, there's like 500 kids there, and only like, I don't know, 15 teams won an award for something.
Yeah.
And they were just waiting on pins and needles, just hoping their number got called. And when it did, they just erupted. It was like, and I turned to my son after he came back and he sat down. They were so excited. They're passing the one trophy around to the whole team. I said, now, if they'd have given you that exact same trophy to everybody in the room, would it have meant anything to you?
Yeah.
He's like, well, no. Because, if everybody got it, then what's the... Yeah. And it's like this pendulum.
Mm-hmm.
And we were, many of us in the generation where it was never good enough, and you always had to be number one. I think we've swung to the point where everybody's number one.
Yeah.
And yet that's not true either. And there's this middle of the road, what's that?
The Incredibles, if everybody's special,
No
nobody's
one
special.
does. Yeah. Oh, that's a deep quote. Incredible. I'll quote that.
Just for my sake, I need to say I smirked because this is very quick. My daughter's 7 and my son is 3, and they always compete. Like, I want to open the door, and they run to the door, and I got here first. So they're running to the car the other day, and Ruthie goes, "I beat you," and Joel's like, "Oh no, I've been beaten," you know. and Kim instinctually, right or wrong, goes, "No, Ruthie, you're the winner of the 7-year-olds. He's the winner of the 3-year-olds." And I was like, that was smart. What was that? I didn't really think about it. I was like, no, Ruthie beat him. Yeah. You get low and get fast.
Yeah, take her out.
But that was my wife's instinct was, you're the winner of the 7. She's a teacher, professional teacher, so she knows those things.
But there is a pendulum swing, like you said, between generations. And there's a few threads that a lot of us notice is parenting styles of my parents. For me personally, I had no curfew. I didn't ever have to text my mom. I could do whatever I wanted because, well, one, they trusted me. I'd earned a lot of trust. But they said, go. And I think part of that is because they grew up and it was home by 9. Don't do this. Don't hang out with them. Do this right now. Stuff like that. And so what will probably happen is I will raise my kids with rules. And it just keeps swinging back and forth. And there's a lot of threads like that do that.
So how important is church attendance to you guys? Because I keep hearing about groups and everything you're doing in your homes and stuff, but it's almost like secondary. And it sounds like, if what I'm hearing, you're wanting authenticity, but essentially I'm reading between the lines that you have major trust issues with watching a guy on a stage preach a sermon. So for us practically as leaders, what do we do? Because, I mean, is it like we got to pour into groups more, we got to develop more leaders to get that authenticity?
Yeah.
Is the church attendance and big church and mega church idea, is that so far off with your all's generation because you have such trust issues?
Yeah.
Do we need to go back to house churches? What do we need to do? You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Some pastors have already made that decision, but it's a more progressive idea in California. They have these groups-only churches.
So how important is church attendance, big church attendance, if at all?
Yeah, so you can...
Maybe even beyond you three, and then how... What do you understand what I'm saying? The trust issue. Is there a trust issue?
Yeah.
Is it like, I'm not really getting nothing out of that because I can't even trust the guy.
Yeah.
But before you guys respond, so like we were basically asking the same question, so I just want to piggyback one aspect and then let you guys kind of elaborate. And so like, in addition to this idea of church attendance, like as a believer, like where that fits, but beyond that is like, as we walk, you know, with Jesus in the Great Commission, like those who are far from God, like what role does that play in like your age demographic? Does that make sense? Not necessarily like as somebody who's professed as a Christian, but who's somebody who's like acknowledging they're far from God, and like what is their interest and what is the role of a Sunday morning gathering?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I think that for us coming into a big church, again, we want to be known and we want to have an authentic experience, and we want people to know us for who we really, truly are. And so walking into a big church of 500 people, which is usually what we're at here, 200, 500, maybe even more, there's no way to come in there not knowing anybody and be known leaving. Like, it's very rare to walk, I see, it's for somebody to walk into a church, they listen to the sermon, they have worship, and then they leave. Like, without small groups and without events and without the youth group and things outside of that Sunday church, and again, that Sunday church is so good for teaching and for worshiping and with the people of God and for prayer and all of that. But like, in order for somebody who's lost to come in and really take it and go for it, I really don't think that them coming in and sitting in a service is going to keep them there. It might, like, obviously the Spirit of God is very powerful, and the gospel is amazing, and like Steve was saying, goes through all generations and covers all sorts of bases. But somebody coming in and hearing the sermon, they can feel it, and they can feel the worship and they can know that God is real. But in order for them to really stay and take for it, they need, like I was saying, they need that to be known. They need to have that small group. Like, we need that fellowship in order to continue, in order to strengthen ourselves.
Do we need to count different for your all's generation? Because you guys all know, like, the way the church counts is butts and seats and dollars in the plate, right? That's what we run everything off of. How many did you have?
Our
And
generation
what was the
hates that,
offering?
by the way.
Oh yeah.
So
Hates
what?
that. Our generation hates that.
We
See,
hate
I need to
numbers.
hear that.
Yeah.
Like, so what do we need to count?
It's
How do
what-
we gauge whether we're
So,
successful?
like,
or-
the church, so like, this is my opinion, take it, as you will, but I think that anyone from my generation is not gonna wander into a church, right? Not like, it's not the olden days where people just walk into a church because church is good and I gotta go to church with mommy and daddy go to church. Our generation can care poop less about what our parents did, right?
You're talking about a Sunday morning church
service,
They
yeah.
can care less.
They
It's
can
off the radar.
care less about coming unless that they are truly dedicated to Christ. Like, when I came to Cookeville, one of the first things I sought was a church. But I have plenty of friends that I went to church with that the first thing that they sought in Cookeville was not fun. They didn't care less about finding a church. They may have wandered into one church service and never went back because
Time is quantitative.
Yeah, time is
worth money.
Yeah, so like they could be doing plenty of other things with their time. So what we're getting at is that, like, you have to have these intentional relationships outside of the church building, right? People, the only reason that my generation comes to church is because someone invites them to come to church, or is like, hey, like, do you want to come do this thing with us? And then when when you're doing the thing or like the activity, then you're like, hey, we have this church service on Sunday, like, we can come pick you up, like, we can come bring you in, and like, it's the intentionality outside of the worship service that then gets them to come to the worship service and be taught about Jesus by like guys like you that have, MDivs and training and like have the diplomas and have the knowledge, right? Because it's really more or less training your congregation to have intentional relationships outside of church and be like, this is how you get people to come in. This is how you get people to come to your Sunday service to learn about Jesus in a deeper way, right? And like our generation, like they don't come to a church because there's 5,000 people and like, wow, look at this crazy building and all that stuff. They come to a church because they feel connected with the body and they feel connected with at least one person that goes there, right? Like, the big concept now is like your one person can reach thousands because you tell 10 people about Jesus every day, and they tell people about Jesus every day, right? And the pyramid, the church pyramid scheme.
So the whole idea that my generation was taught was Sunday morning is a funnel to everything else. So if you have a big service, that's what will funnel to Sunday school, that's what will funnel to small groups.
Right.
What you're saying for your generation is you got
it's a little bit flipped. 100%.
You gotta flip it.
100%.
It's almost like,
it's like
what you do Monday to Saturday is more important to reach
instead
young
of
people
the preacher being at the
than on
top of the
Sunday.
pyramid, right, and he just pours and everything else and everything that he does makes the church a bigger thing. It is instead the individual at the top of the pyramid that then pours everything else and like gets people to come and like gets people to attend. And not to say that like the role of the pastor isn't important.
Nothing is diminished.
It's just flipped, right?
It's what he pours into.
Yes, it's like what he pours into, like not like it's not because we think that our generation thinks that like the individual and like the individual showing interest in them is much more important than like this one guy on stage who kind of feels distant. You know what I mean? Or like even if you don't have a stage, the one guy that preaches and like has all this knowledge feels distant.
Yeah.
So like when they have someone that invites them that doesn't feel as distant, that just is like a dude that's in their class, or is that got an F on the test that they got an F on a week ago. You know what I mean? Like,
so they're not coming to listen to me preach?
they may not at first, but
So, I got some ads for you later, Brian.
I think
All right, it's
something-
12 o'clock. Yeah, it's 12:05.